and welcome to this week's edition of Gospel Weekly. You may notice that this week's edition of the Gospel is slightly different. That's because it's been adapted for children and it has been approved by the U.S. Bishops Association. For 15 years, Emperor Tiberius had ruled that part of the world, and Annas and Caiaphas were the Jewish high priests. At that time, God spoke to Zechariah's son, who was living in the desert. So John went along the Jordan Valley, telling people, "Turn back to God and be baptized. Then your sins will be forgiven." Isaiah the prophet wrote about John when he said, "In the desert, someone is shouting, 'Get the road ready for the Lord. Make straight the path for him. Fill up every valley and level every mountain and hill. Straighten the crooked paths and smooth out the rough roads. Then everyone will see the saving power of God." The Gospel of the Lord. And now we'll reflect on this Gospel.
Wow, that was an amazing reading. And do you know what that reading was all about? Love, which is perfect for week 2 of Advent. Before you start anything, remember, the first thing we gotta do is light our really neat Advent wreath. So this week, we light 2 candles, one for last week, which was week 1, and one purple candle for week 2. Now, the purple candle stands for love. How do we talk about love? Well, think about this. Let's say that these 2 cups are you, right? This is one version of you, and this is the other version of you. Now, when we just use our heart all by itself with none of God's love, just the only love we have in our heart, we all have love in us. Look at what we got here. Fill the cup up a little bit. That's fine. It's still okay. But what do we do when we have God's love that fills us? Hold on one second. I'll be right back. Oh, this is God's love. A bucket filled with God's love. Now, let's see what happens to the second cup. Let's see what happens to you when I fill you with God's love. Let's see. Oh man, she's filling fast. She's filling fast. I don't know. Oh my gosh, it overflows. And I still have way more left in this bucket. I can't even put all of God's love into one cup. And that's what happens when you fill yourself with God's love. Your cup overflows. Sometimes you'll even hear the priest say that, or a reading from the Bible that says your cup overflows with God's love. So why would you ever just use your own by itself? Why wouldn't you fill yourself up with God's love over and over and over again? Because look at what happens. You can just be filled with love. So during the Christmas season, there are a few things we can do to make sure that people feel God's love. The first is, of course, to love yourself. Make sure that you know all of the beautiful gifts you have from God and that you love God for that. The second thing we can do is love your family and friends. And the third thing we can do is love your neighbors and even strangers by helping them when you can. And that's what the Advent season is all about, preparing you for God's love. And this has been another week of the Gospel Reading.